Hello and welcome to this Price of Job tutorial. In this video we'll be taking a look at the linear measuring tool in the new Takeoff module in Price of Job. The linear measuring tool is a handy tool for measuring skirting boards, window boards, edges, gaps, slopes, fascias, or anything where you need to determine the length. We can access it by clicking here on the linear measure tool. And if we zoom in, we can see that it has changed our cursor into a pencil cursor, and it's opened the linear measure toolbar up across the top. So for example, let's measure the perimeter of the living room in this example here. So we'll know how much skirting is required. Now in the toolbar we have options for a single linear measurement or a polygon. So let's select a polygon for this room. For thickness we can just set the thickness at 50 millimeters. And let's choose a group for this. Let's call this skirtings. Now we can measure across the walls of the living room. We'll start in this corner here and click up to the next corner, and I will hold the shift button so that we snap to a right angle. And we'll just continue measuring across all the various walls of the living room here. Now I will click the escape button to exit the linear measure tool. And let's zoom in, and because this is difficult to see, let's change the color of our tool to something brighter. Let's choose a bright red. And if we look in the skirtings group, we can see that the total length of skirtings required is 18.7 meters. We can also use this for window boards. Because these are just simple single lengths, we won't require a polygon, so let's select our linear measure tool, and this time we'll select a single linear length. And we'll change our window boards to a different color, set the thickness to 200 millimeters, and then we'll trace out all of our various window boards. So here's one, and another, and I'll hold the shift button so that I'm drawing on a right angle, and we'll just draw out all of the various windows. And now our window boards have been added. But you'll notice that I added them to the wrong group. I've added them to skirting. So let's click escape to exit the linear measure tool. And we can select each of these windows separately to change their group, but because we have so many window boards, but only one skirting board, it may be easier just to go to the group here. So let's change this entire group to window boards. And now what we can do is just click on the skirting and move the skirting only from window boards back to skirtings. There. So now we have 5 window boards and 1 skirting. We can also use the linear measure tool for taking room measurements for decorating, for example paint or wallpaper. So for this example, let's change our color again. We'll change this to a pink, and we'll select a polygon tool, and we'll change the thickness. In reality, the thickness would only be about 1 millimeter, but that might be difficult to see on our floor plan. So let's just choose 50 millimeters with a wall height of 2400 millimeters. This time we'll assign the group to decorating, which I don't see in the categories here, so we'll just simply type it in manually. And now with our pencil tool, we can draw out the perimeter of the dining room, and then press escape to exit the linear tool. And now if we take a look at our decorating group, we can see that the total length is 13 meters, but because we set the height in our toolbar, we can also choose to show the total area. Now because the wallpaper would be only one-sided, we can select one-sided area. So the total area of our dining room walls would be 31.89 square meters. We can also use the linear measure tool for calculating our plasterboard. So again, let's select the linear measure tool, and we have a partition here, so let's zoom in on this, and we'll give our plasterboard a new color, and this will be a single line, and we'll set our thickness at 150 and change our group to plasterboard. And I don't see that in the categories here, so we'll just type that in manually. Now we can use the linear measure tool to measure this wall here. Got one section there and one section there. So now under our plasterboard group, we have these 2 sections of walls that have been added, but because the plasterboard will have to be applied to both sides of this partition, we will select the 2 sides area. So the total area of both sides of this partition would be 5.7 square meters. If we compare that to only one-sided areas, we can see that there's only 2.8 square meters of area per side. So we'll deselect the one-sided area just to avoid confusion. If this wall, rather than plasterboard, were to be something like concrete and we wanted to measure the volume, we could select the volume here, and this would show us the amount of concrete that was required. If we press escape to exit the linear measure tool, we can select this wall and we can adjust its thickness as necessary. So let's say as a concrete wall, maybe it was only 100 millimeters. Same thing with this one. Adjust that to 100 millimeters thickness. And there we can see that our volume has been updated to show us how much concrete we would need to pour a concrete wall. We can also use the linear measure tool on elevation drawings, and this can be very handy for measuring the fascia. So we'll just zoom in on this elevation drawing, and we'll close this group and select our linear measure tool, and we'll select a new color for our fascias. We'll choose this gray one, and these are a series of straight lengths, so we'll choose a single shape. 150 millimeters is fine, and we'll change our grouping from plasterboard to fascias. So here we can click on this end of the fascia and run across to here, and then start a new fascia here to the peak, and then from the peak to the bottom, and then from this side of the garage to that side of the garage. And now when we look on our fascias group, we can see the total length of all of our fascias. So we require approximately 17 meters in fascia. We can also use the linear measure tool to measure curves. So let's take a look at this floor plan with some interesting curves. Let's select the linear measure tool. We'll change our color to red, and we'll change our grouping to something generic this time. Let's just select perimeters. And for this measure, let's choose the polygon tool. And we'll set a thickness so that we can see this on our map, 200 millimeters. So now we'll start on this end of the wall and click on this corner and drop down to this corner. And then we'll go to the outside end of the curve and click there. And then we'll go to the end of the curve and click there. And then the inside of the curve here. And then the end of the curve there. And then to exit our linear measure tool, we'll click escape. And now if we zoom in, we can see that between each of the anchor points of our linear measure tool, there's a small dot. And this is for drawing the curves in our line. So what we can do is just adjust this to fit the curve of our floor plan, and then move to the next section. So we'll grab this curving dot and adjust that to fit our floor plan, move across, grab the next curving dot, and adjust that to fit our floor plan, and the next curving dot, and adjust that to fit the floor plan. And if anything has moved off, we can simply grab that anchor point and realign that. And here we'll just adjust our curve. And with this, you can draw very complex designs. If we take a look at our perimeters now, we can see that we've mapped out a total of 15 meters in length. Let's do one more example. We'll grab our linear tool and we'll measure this wall here. So we'll just measure from here straight across to there, and then exit our linear tool, zoom in, pan across. And now if we take a look, there is our curve dot, and we'll just stretch this out all the way until it matches our floor plan. There. And this has been added to our total perimeter length. So this literally makes the linear measure tool quite flexible. We can also use the linear measure tool to measure slopes. So for example, let's find a handrail in a stairwell. We'll zoom in here. So let's close this group and activate the linear measure tool. And in this stairwell, we will have a handrail that extends from here. Let's give our handrail a color. We'll give this a brown. And we will change the group from perimeters to handrails. So now we will simply draw here from the beginning of the handrail and take it right to the top of the stairs. And I'll hold my shift key so that it locks to a right angle, so it's straight lines. There we go. There is our handrail. Oh, I'll press escape to exit the linear measure tool. Now if we laid that handrail flat on the ground, currently it only shows to be 2.5 meters long. However, because this handrail is sloped up an entire length of stairs, it's going to be much longer than that. So let's select this handrail, and then here under the pitch, we can adjust the slider until it matches the pitch of our stairs. In this case, it is 45 degrees. And now in the group, we can activate the sloped length, and we can see that vertically, this handrail only looks like it's 2.5 meters long, but in actuality, it is 3.5 meters long to extend the entire length of the stairs on a slope. So we'll hide the bird's eye length and keep the sloped length so we have the accurate length of our handrail. Here we can adjust the opacity of our markings, change the group category, adjust the thickness and height, or delete all group items. Also, there's a visibility icon here, and we can click on this, and by flashing this on our floor plan, it helps us to locate the various elements that we have already marked. And that's how to use the linear measure tool in the new Takeoff module. Thank you for using Price a Job.